I stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror of the diner's restroom, my hands gripping the chipped porcelain sink until my knuckles turned white. The fluorescent light above flickered intermittently, casting harsh shadows across my face that made the dark circles under my eyes look even more pronounced. 24 hours. That's how long it had been since my entire world imploded with the ping of a single notification on my phone. The sound of the bell above the diner's entrance chimed again, pulling me back to reality. I straightened my uniform, a faded pink dress that had seen better days, complete with a grease-stained apron that no amount of washing could fully clean. My shift at Mel's Diner had started at 6 this morning, and the lunch rush was about to begin. I couldn't afford to lose this job, not when it was the only thing keeping me afloat after everything that had happened. Walking back into the main dining area, the familiar sounds and smells enveloped me like a worn blanket. The sizzle of bacon on the griddle, the clink of coffee cups against saucers, the low murmur of conversations mixing with the oldies playing on the radio. The black and white checkered floor was scuffed from decades of foot traffic, and the red vinyl booths bore the marks of countless customers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and right now, honesty was all I had left. "Faith, table 6 needs their check," called out Dolores, the head waitress who'd been working here since before I was born. Her graying hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her kind eyes held the wisdom of someone who'd seen it all. She was the closest thing to a mother figure I'd had since my parents died in that car accident 3 years ago. I grabbed the check and made my way over to the elderly couple sitting by the window. They were regulars, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, who came in every Tuesday for the meatloaf special. As I placed the slip of paper on their table, Mrs. Peterson smiled up at me with genuine warmth. "You look tired, dear," she said, her voice soft with concern. "Are you taking care of yourself?" "Just working hard, Mrs. Peterson," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. If only she knew how far from okay I really was. The bell chimed again, and I glanced toward the entrance to see a group of men in expensive suits entering. They looked completely out of place in our humble diner, their tailored clothing and polished shoes standing in stark contrast to our blue-collar clientele. Something about their presence made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, an instinctive warning that danger had just walked through our door. Dolores appeared beside me, her expression tense. "Faith, you take table 3. I'll handle the suits." But before she could move, one of the men was already approaching us. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair perfectly styled despite the Chicago wind outside. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, except for his eyes, dark brown and intense, like they could see straight through to your soul. When he spoke, his voice carried a slight accent that made my stomach clench with recognition. "We'd like to speak with Faith Morrison," he said, his tone polite but leaving no room for negotiation. My blood turned to ice. How did they know my name? I'd been using my mother's maiden name, Patterson, since I'd started working here 6 months ago. The only people who knew my real identity were... No, it couldn't be. "I'm sorry, but we don't have anyone by that name working here," Dolores said, stepping protectively in front of me. But the man's eyes never left mine, and I could see in them that he knew exactly who I was. "Miss Morrison," he continued, ignoring Dolores entirely, "my employer would like to have a word with you. Now." The word employer sent another chill down my spine. I knew what that meant in Chicago. I knew what kind of men wore suits like that and spoke with that particular blend of authority and menace. My father had told me stories before he died, warnings about the families that controlled this city from the shadows. "I don't know what you're talking about," I whispered. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew it was useless. They'd found me, and there was nowhere left to run. The man reached into his jacket, and I flinched, expecting the worst. Instead, he pulled out a cell phone and showed me the screen. The video was paused on the very first frame, but I could see enough to know what it was. My heart stopped beating for what felt like an eternity before hammering back to life with painful intensity. "This has caused quite a stir," he said quietly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "My employer is very displeased that something so personal has been made public. He'd like to discuss the matter with you privately." I felt the world tilting around me, the familiar sounds of the diner fading into a buzzing white noise. Marcus had actually done it. After all his threats and manipulation, my ex-boyfriend had finally followed through on his promise to destroy me. The intimate video he'd recorded without my knowledge during our relationship was now out there for the world to see, and somehow it had reached the attention of people I desperately wanted to avoid. "Faith?" Dolores's voice seemed to come from very far away. "What's going on? Do you know these men?" I shook my head mutely, unable to form words. The man put his phone away and straightened his tie with practiced efficiency. Around us, the other customers had begun to notice the tension, conversations dying as people sensed something was wrong. "We can do this easy or hard, Miss Morrison," the man continued. "But either way, you're coming with us. Mr. Russo doesn't like to be kept waiting." Vincent Russo. Even I knew that name, whispered in the same breath as fear and respect throughout Chicago. The head of the Russo crime family, known for his intelligence, ruthlessness, and complete control over the city's underworld. What could he possibly want with me? "I need to finish my shift," I said weakly, grasping at any excuse to delay the inevitable. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Your shift is over. Permanently. Mr. Rodriguez has already been compensated for your sudden departure." I looked around desperately, but I knew there was no escape. The other suited men had positioned themselves strategically around the diner, blocking the exits without being obvious about it. These weren't amateurs. They were professionals who'd done this many times before. "Can I at least get my things from the back?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded curtly. "You have 2 minutes." I walked on unsteady legs to the small employee area behind the kitchen, my mind racing. In my locker was the only photo I had left of my parents, along with the small amount of cash I'd saved from my tips. As I gathered my meager possessions, I caught sight of myself in the small mirror we'd hung on the wall. The girl looking back at me seemed like a stranger, pale, frightened, and completely alone. When I returned to the dining area, the men were waiting patiently, but I could see the tension in their posture. Outside, a black SUV with tinted windows idled at the curb, its engine running. This was really happening. There was no waking up from this nightmare. "Dolores," I said, my voice catching. "Thank you for everything. You've been—" "Don't you say goodbye like this is permanent," she interrupted, her eyes fierce with protective anger. "Whatever trouble you're in, there's always a way out. You remember that." I nodded, fighting back tears as I followed the men toward the door. As we stepped outside into the crisp autumn air, I felt like I was leaving the last safe place I'd known. The SUV's door opened, revealing a spacious interior with leather seats that probably cost more than I made in a month. "After you, Miss Morrison," the man said, gesturing for me to get in. I hesitated for one last moment, looking back at the diner where I'd found a small measure of peace and purpose. Then I climbed into the vehicle, sealing my fate with the soft click of the door closing behind me. As we pulled away from the curb, I pressed my face to the tinted window and watched my old life disappear into the distance, wondering if I'd ever see it again. The drive through Chicago felt like a funeral procession, each familiar landmark we passed marking another step away from the life I'd known. The man who'd spoken to me at the diner sat across from me in the spacious back seat, his attention focused on his phone, while I tried to make myself as small as possible in the corner. The other passengers remained silent, their presence a constant reminder that I was completely at their mercy. We moved through downtown, past the towering skyscrapers that housed legitimate businesses, toward a part of the city I'd never had reason to visit. The architecture grew older here, more European in style, with buildings that spoke of old money and older secrets. When we finally stopped, it was in front of an elegant restaurant with no visible signage, the kind of place that didn't need to advertise because the right people already knew where to find it. "Out," the man said simply, and I obeyed with trembling legs. The restaurant's exterior was understated but expensive, all clean lines and subtle lighting. A doorman in an immaculate uniform opened the heavy glass door without being asked, nodding respectfully to my escorts. Inside, the atmosphere was hushed and refined, with soft jazz playing in the background and the gentle clink of expensive silverware against china. But what struck me most was how empty it was. For a Tuesday afternoon, the complete absence of other diners seemed wrong until I realized the truth. This entire place had been cleared out for one man. Vincent Russo commanded that level of power and respect. We walked through the main dining area, past tables set with pristine white linens and fresh flowers, toward a private section in the back. The maitre d', a thin man with nervous eyes, bowed slightly as we passed. I could smell something cooking in the kitchen, something rich and complex that made my empty stomach clench with hunger I hadn't realized I felt. The private dining room was smaller, but even more luxurious than the main restaurant. A single table sat in the center, set for two, with a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. And there, with his back to us as he looked out at the skyline, stood Vincent Russo. He was shorter than I'd expected, but no less imposing for it. His dark hair was streaked with silver at the temples, and his suit was so perfectly tailored it looked like it had been painted onto his broad frame. When he turned to face me, I understood immediately why this man inspired both fear and loyalty in equal measure. His face was carved from granite, all hard lines and shadows, with a Roman nose that spoke of Sicilian heritage. But it was his eyes that held me captive. Dark brown, almost black, and filled with an intelligence that seemed to catalog and categorize everything they saw. When those eyes settled on me, I felt like a butterfly pinned to a board, helpless under his scrutiny. "Leave us," he said quietly, and I heard the rustle of fabric as my escorts retreated. The sound of the door closing echoed with finality, and then we were alone. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. He studied me with the intensity of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen, and I struggled to breathe normally under his gaze. Finally, he gestured to one of the chairs at the table. "Sit," he said, his voice carrying a slight Italian accent that made each word sound like music. "You must be hungry." I remained standing, my back pressed against the closed door. "What do you want from me?" He smiled then, but it didn't reach his eyes. Direct. I appreciate that in a woman. He moved to his own chair and sat down with fluid grace. "Please, Miss Morrison, sit. We have much to discuss." Reluctantly, I walked to the table and perched on the edge of the chair, ready to bolt at any moment. Almost immediately, a server appeared with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Vincent waved him away with a subtle gesture. "Water for the lady," he said, "and bring the first course." As the server disappeared, Vincent leaned back in his chair and continued his examination of me. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "What did you expect?" I asked, surprised by my own boldness. "Someone harder, more calculating." He tilted his head slightly. "Someone who would deliberately involve herself with Marcus Chen for personal gain." My blood ran cold at the mention of Marcus's name. "You know about him?" "I know everything about him," Vincent replied, his voice taking on a dangerous edge, "including his recent, creative endeavors with technology." The server returned with water and a plate of bruschetta that looked like artwork. The smell of fresh basil and ripe tomatoes filled the air, but my stomach was too knotted with anxiety to appreciate it. "Marcus works for the Chen family," Vincent continued, as if discussing the weather. Has for about 2 years now. They've been trying to find leverage against me for some time. He picked up a piece of bruschetta and took a delicate bite. Imagine their surprise when one of their low-level soldiers brought them a video featuring my accountant's daughter. My father. A wave of grief and confusion crashed over me. My father wasn't... Your father, Thomas Morrison, handled my family's books for 15 years, Vincent interrupted. He was a good man. Honest. Loyal. His expression darkened. The Chens killed him 3 years ago, made it look like an accident. I've been waiting for the right opportunity to make them pay for that. The room spun around me. My parents' car accident hadn't been an accident at all. They'd been murdered because of my father's connection to this man, to this world I'd known nothing about. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because Marcus Chen thought he was being clever. He cultivated a relationship with you, gained your trust, recorded intimate moments, all with the intention of using them against me when the time was right. Vincent's voice was calm, but I could see the rage simmering beneath the surface. What he didn't realize is that I've been watching you since your parents died, making sure you were safe, staying informed about your life. You've been watching me? The violation of privacy should have angered me, but all I felt was a strange sense of vertigo, like I'd been living in a world that wasn't real. From a distance, he assured me. I owed your father that much. He would have wanted me to look after his daughter. He set down his bruschetta and leaned forward. But now you're in danger, Miss Morrison. The video has been distributed to several of my enemies, and they will try to use you to get to me. But I'm nobody, I protested. I work at a diner. I live in a studio apartment. I have nothing to do with your world. You're Thomas Morrison's daughter, he said simply. That makes you family. And I protect my family. The server returned with the next course, some kind of pasta that smelled incredible. Vincent gestured for me to eat, but I couldn't even pick up my fork. What happened to the video? I asked, dreading the answer. Vincent's expression went completely cold. It's been dealt with, as have the people who saw it. Dealt with? My voice came out as a squeak. Every copy has been destroyed. Every person who viewed it has been educated about the consequences of disrespecting my family. He said it so matter-of-factly that it took a moment for the implications to sink in. You killed them? I felt sick. I protected your honor, he corrected, as your father would have done if he were still alive. I stared at him in horror, trying to reconcile the elegant man sitting across from me with the monster he'd just revealed himself to be. And Marcus? Alive, for now. Vincent finally picked up his fork and began eating his pasta with refined precision. I thought you might want to be involved in deciding his fate. I don't want anyone to die because of me, I said quickly. People have already died because of you, he replied calmly. The question is whether their deaths will have meaning or not. We sat in silence while he ate, and I struggled to process everything I'd learned. My entire life had been a lie. My parents' death hadn't been an accident. Marcus had been using me from the beginning, and now I was sitting across from one of the most dangerous men in Chicago, who claimed to be protecting me out of loyalty to my dead father. What happens now? I asked finally. Vincent set down his fork and dabbed at his mouth with his napkin. Now, you come home with me. You'll be safe there while we deal with the Chen family permanently. Home with you? I felt panic rising in my chest. I have a compound outside the city. Very secure, very private. You'll have everything you need while this matter is resolved. For how long? Something shifted in his expression, a hardness that made my skin crawl. As long as necessary. And if I refuse? He smiled that cold smile again. The Chen family knows who you are now, Miss Morrison. They know about your connection to me through your father. Do you really think you'd be safe walking out of here alone? I looked toward the windows, at the city beyond, and realized he was right. I'd been marked by association with this man, this world, whether I wanted it or not. My old life was gone, burned away by Marcus's betrayal and Vincent's retribution. I need to think, I said. You can think at my home, he replied, standing and straightening his jacket, but you will come with me now. This isn't a negotiation, cara mia. It's a rescue. As he walked around the table toward me, I caught a glimpse of something under his jacket. The outline of a weapon. Vincent Russo wasn't just offering protection. He was making it clear that resistance wasn't an option. The door opened, and his men returned as if summoned by some invisible signal. Vincent extended his hand to me, a gesture that might have looked gallant to an observer, but felt like a chain around my wrist. "Welcome to the family, Faith," he said softly. "Your father would be proud." The drive to Vincent's compound took us far from the city, through suburban neighborhoods that gradually gave way to wooded estates where privacy was measured in acres rather than fences. The further we traveled from Chicago, the more isolated I felt, as if each mile was another layer of protection, or imprisonment, being wrapped around me. Vincent sat beside me in the back of a different vehicle now, a armored sedan that moved with surprising silence through the winding roads. He'd made several phone calls during the journey, speaking in rapid Italian that flowed like music, despite the obvious tension in his voice. I caught my father's name mentioned several times, along with what sounded like orders being given with quiet authority. "Tell me about him," I said, when he ended his latest call. "About my father." Vincent looked at me with something that might have been surprise. "What would you like to know?" "Everything. If he worked for you for 15 years, you must have known him well." A small smile played at the corners of Vincent's mouth, and for the first time since I'd met him, it seemed genuine. Thomas was. Unique in my line of work. Completely honest, which should have made him a liability. But his integrity was so absolute that it became his greatest asset. He turned to look out the window at the passing landscape. When I took over from my father, many of the old guard questioned my decisions. I was young, perhaps too eager to modernize our operations. Your father was the one who helped me prove that honor and profit could coexist. What did he do exactly? He kept our books clean, made sure our legitimate businesses actually were legitimate. More importantly, he helped me understand which ventures were worth the risk and which would only bring unwanted attention. Vincent's voice grew softer. He used to say that numbers never lied, but people always did. I learned to trust his judgment over my own instincts in matters of business. The car turned off the main road onto a private drive marked only by a small stone pillar. Ahead, I could see gates that looked like they belonged to a medieval fortress, tall iron bars set between stone columns, with cameras and sensors that tracked our approach. "He talked about you constantly," Vincent continued as the gates opened silently before us. "Your grades, your dreams of becoming a teacher, your kindness to stray animals. He carried photos of you in his wallet and showed them to anyone who would look." Tears pricked at my eyes. It had been so long since anyone had spoken about my father with such affection, such detailed memory. "Did he know? About what you really did?" Vincent's expression grew serious. He knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. He chose to work for me anyway, because he believed I was trying to build something better than what came before. I hope I proved him right. The compound that came into view around the bend in the drive took my breath away. It wasn't the cold, industrial fortress I'd expected, but rather an elegant estate that managed to be both beautiful and intimidating. The main house was built of warm stone and rich wood, with lines that suggested Italian villa merged with American comfort. Gardens surrounded the building, meticulously maintained and designed to provide both beauty and strategic sight lines. It's beautiful, I admitted as we pulled up to the front entrance. It was my mother's design, Vincent said, and I caught a note of sadness in his voice. She wanted a home that felt like family, not like a headquarters. Staff emerged to meet us, not the cold-faced guards I'd expected, but people who genuinely seemed pleased to see Vincent return. An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes approached our car, her face lighting up when Vincent stepped out. "Welcome home, Vincent," she said in accented English, then looked curiously at me. "Maria, this is Faith Morrison, Thomas Morrison's daughter." Vincent's voice carried an unmistakable note of warning. "She'll be staying with us indefinitely. Please prepare the blue guest suite." Maria's expression changed immediately to one of warmth and sympathy. "Ah, Thomas's little girl. He showed us so many pictures." She moved toward me with motherly intent. "You look just like your mother, Kara. Come, you must be exhausted." As Maria ushered me toward the house, I caught Vincent giving quiet instructions to several men who'd appeared from various points around the property. The security here was extensive, but well hidden, professional enough to be nearly invisible while still maintaining complete coverage. The interior of the house was even more stunning than the exterior. Rich hardwood floors were covered with antique rugs that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime. The walls displayed what looked like museum-quality artwork, alongside family photographs that showed generations of Russos in various stages of life. It felt lived in despite its obvious luxury, like a real home rather than a showplace. "Your room is upstairs," Maria explained as we climbed a grand staircase. "Vincent wanted you to have the suite that overlooks the gardens. It has the best morning light." She led me down a hallway lined with more family portraits to a door she opened with obvious pride. The room beyond was larger than my entire apartment had been, with a 4-poster bed, sitting area, and French doors that opened onto a private balcony. Everything was decorated in shades of blue and cream, giving it a serene, peaceful feeling that stood in stark contrast to the chaos of my day. "There are clothes in the wardrobe," Maria said, opening doors to reveal an extensive collection of women's clothing in various sizes. "Vincent had them delivered this afternoon. If nothing fits properly, just let me know and we'll have alterations made." I stared at the clothes. Beautiful things in quality fabrics, all brand new with tags still attached. This afternoon? But how did he know? "Vincent plans for everything," Maria said simply. "It's how he keeps the people he cares about safe." After Maria left me alone to settle in, I wandered around the room like a caged animal, touching things carefully as if they might disappear if I pressed too hard. Everything was real, solid, expensive. The bed linens were softer than anything I'd ever felt. The bathroom adjoining the room was larger than most people's living rooms, with a soaking tub and shower that looked like something from a luxury hotel. But despite the obvious luxury, I felt the weight of my situation settling over me like a heavy blanket. I was a prisoner here, however comfortable the accommodations. Vincent had made it clear that leaving wasn't an option, at least not until he'd settled his score with the Chen family. A knock at the door interrupted my brooding. "Come in," I called, expecting Maria. Instead, Vincent entered, carrying a silver tray with what looked like tea service. He'd changed from his suit into more casual clothes, dark slacks and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with faint scars that spoke of a violent past. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on the small table by the sitting area. Maria prepared some of her special biscotti. She was very fond of your father. I remained by the window, putting as much distance between us as possible. "How many people work for you?" "Here at the compound?" "About 30 full-time staff. Security, housekeeping, grounds crew, kitchen staff." He poured tea from an elegant china pot. "But if you're asking about my overall organization, that number is considerably higher." "And they all know who I am?" They know your family. That's all they need to know. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. We have more to discuss. Reluctantly, I moved away from the window and perched on the edge of the offered chair. The tea smelled wonderful, something floral and soothing that reminded me of my mother's garden. I've been in contact with my sources regarding Marcus Chen, Vincent said, settling back in his chair with the ease of a man completely comfortable in his own domain. He's been trying to reach you since yesterday. 17 calls to your cell phone, which my people intercepted. 12 attempts to contact you at the diner before we collected you. My stomach clenched. What does he want? To apologize, according to the messages he left. To explain that the video wasn't supposed to be distributed, that it was an accident. Vincent's voice dripped with contempt. He's frightened. His handlers in the Chen organization aren't pleased with how this situation has developed. Meaning? Meaning they expected you to run to me for protection, but they didn't expect me to respond quite so decisively. Vincent took a sip of his tea. 23 people had access to that video before I shut down the distribution network. All of them are now either in hiding or permanently silenced. The casual way he spoke about murder made my hands shake. You can't just kill people. I can and I do when they threaten my family, he replied matter-of-factly. Your father understood this about me. It's why he trusted me to protect what mattered to him. I'm not a possession to be protected, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Vincent studied me over his teacup, those dark eyes seeing too much. No, you're not. You're Thomas Morrison's daughter, which makes you infinitely more valuable than any possession. He set down his cup and leaned forward. The Chen family made a critical error when they decided to use you against me. They awakened something that should have remained sleeping. What do you mean? War, cara mia. This insult cannot stand. They killed your father, corrupted his daughter's honor, and attempted to use both against me. His voice remained calm, but I could see the rage burning behind his eyes. There will be consequences. I felt sick imagining the bloodshed that was coming. Can't you just let it go? I don't care about the video anymore. It's done. It's not about the video, Vincent said, standing and moving to the window. It's about respect. About the message we send when we allow our family to be attacked. He turned back to me. Your father died because he was loyal to me. I failed to protect him then. I won't fail to protect his daughter now. Even if I don't want your protection? He smiled that cold smile again. Want has nothing to do with it. You are under my protection whether you accept it or not. The only question is whether you'll be comfortable while I deal with this situation. I stood as well, anger finally overriding my fear. You can't just decide my life for me. I can, and I have, he replied calmly. You can hate me for it if you choose, but you'll be alive to hate me, which is more than I can guarantee if you try to return to your previous life. We stared at each other across the elegant room, and I realized with crushing certainty that he meant every word. Vincent Russo had claimed me as surely as if he'd locked me in a cell. The only difference was that my cell had Egyptian cotton sheets and a view of the gardens. How long? I asked quietly. Until it's finished. Until the Chen family no longer exists to threaten you. And then? Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of something I couldn't identify. Then we'll see, won't we? As the sun set outside my windows, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I realized that my old life was truly over. Faith Morrison, the diner waitress, was gone. What would take her place remained to be seen. I woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the French doors and the sound of someone moving quietly in my room. For a moment, I forgot where I was, the luxury of the bed and the quality of the light completely foreign to my usual reality. Then memory crashed back, and I sat up quickly to find Maria arranging fresh flowers on the dresser. "Good morning, Kara," she said with a warm smile. "I hope you slept well." I hadn't, actually. Every sound in the unfamiliar house had jolted me awake. Footsteps in the hallway, the distant murmur of voices, the soft chime of what I assumed was a security system. But Maria's kindness made me nod anyway. "Vincent has asked me to show you around this morning," she continued, moving to open the French doors. "He thought you might like to understand how things work here." Fresh air swept into the room, carrying the scent of roses and something else. Coffee and bacon, from what had to be an incredible kitchen somewhere below. My stomach growled embarrassingly loud, reminding me that I'd barely eaten yesterday. "First, breakfast," Maria said with a knowing smile. "Then the tour." I showered quickly in the enormous bathroom, marveling at water pressure that actually worked and towels soft enough to sleep on. The clothes in the wardrobe fit perfectly, too perfectly, making me wonder again how Vincent had known my exact measurements. I selected a simple blue dress that covered everything appropriately, while still managing to look more expensive than anything I'd ever owned. The kitchen, when Maria led me there, was a chef's dream rendered in warm wood and granite. Windows on 2 walls provided views of different garden areas, and the smell of fresh bread baking filled the air. An older man with the powerful build of someone who'd worked with his hands his whole life looked up from the stove as we entered. "This is Carlo," Maria said. "He's been cooking for the Russo family for 20 years. Carlo wiped his hands on his apron and gave me a formal nod. "Miss Morrison, your father was a good man. Always polite to the kitchen staff, always grateful for what was prepared for him." The casual mention of my father's familiarity with this place hit me harder than I expected. "He ate here often?" "Every month, sometimes more," Carlo replied, returning to the bacon he was tending. "Vincent would have him for dinner when they needed to discuss business. Your father loved my osso buco." Maria guided me to a breakfast nook that looked out over what appeared to be a vegetable garden. A place setting waited for me, fine china and silver, that probably cost more than I made in a month. Carlo appeared with a plate of eggs, bacon, and fresh fruit, arranged like artwork. "Vincent eats early and is already in his office," Maria explained as I ate. "He handles most business matters in the morning when his mind is clearest." "What kind of business?" I asked, wondering how much these people knew about their employer's real activities. Maria's expression became carefully neutral. "Vincent has many interests. Import and export companies, several restaurants, construction projects. He keeps very busy." The diplomatic non-answer told me everything I needed to know about how much the household staff was told about Vincent's operations. They were loyal, but they were also protected from knowledge that could endanger them. After breakfast, Maria led me on a tour that gradually revealed the true nature of Vincent's compound. The main house was beautiful and comfortable, but it was also a fortress. Windows that looked like normal glass were actually bulletproof. The elegant artwork concealed security cameras. The peaceful gardens had sightlines carefully planned to provide no cover for potential threats. "Vincent takes security very seriously," Maria explained, as we walked through a living room that managed to be both elegant and practical. "Too many people in his position assume they're untouchable. Vincent knows better." We passed Vincent's office, and through the partially open door, I could see him behind a massive wooden desk, speaking quietly on the phone while reviewing documents. He'd changed into another perfect suit, this one charcoal gray that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. When he looked up and saw me, he nodded politely, but didn't interrupt his conversation. "He works very hard," Maria said, noticing my attention. "Sometimes I think too hard. It's good for him to have family in the house again." "Family?" I stopped walking to stare at her. Maria's expression grew sad. "Vincent lost his wife and daughter in a car accident 5 years ago. Since then, this house has been very quiet, very empty. Your presence here. It reminds him of happier times. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Vincent had suffered the same kind of loss I had, but his had included a child. No wonder he understood the importance of family loyalty, of protecting what mattered. He never remarried? No. Vincent is not a man who loves easily, but when he does, it is forever. Maria resumed walking, leading me toward what appeared to be a library. He blames himself for what happened to them. If he had been more careful about his enemies, if he had provided better security. We entered a room lined floor to ceiling with books, thousands of them in multiple languages. The leather bindings and rich wood gave it the feeling of an old-world study, somewhere a scholar might spend his life in contemplation. But even here, I noticed the strategic placement of chairs that provided views of all entrances. "This was your father's favorite room," Maria said, gesturing to a chair by the window. He would sit there for hours, reading Vincent's books on business philosophy and economics. Sometimes they would debate late into the night about market theories and investment strategies. I moved to the chair she'd indicated, running my fingers along the worn leather armrests. I could almost picture my father here, glasses perched on his nose as he argued some fine point of financial theory with Vincent. It made him feel closer somehow, more real than he'd seemed since his death. "Maria," I said carefully, "what exactly happened to Vincent's family?" Her face grew troubled. A bomb in their car. It was meant for Vincent, but he had been delayed at a meeting. His wife Elena was picking up their daughter Sophia from ballet class. She crossed herself. The little one was only 7 years old. The weight of that tragedy settled over me like a shroud. No wonder Vincent spoke of family protection with such intensity. He'd failed to protect the people who mattered most to him, and now he was determined not to fail again. "The people responsible?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "Gone," Maria said simply. "All of them." Vincent made sure of that. We continued the tour in contemplative silence, moving through rooms that spoke of wealth and taste, but also of a man living alone in a house meant for a family. There were subtle signs everywhere: a child's drawing framed on a hallway wall, a woman's touch in the flower arrangements that seemed too delicate for Vincent's masculine hands to have arranged. The final stop was a wing of the house I hadn't seen before, accessible through a door that required Maria to enter a code. Beyond it lay what was clearly the business side of Vincent's operations. Offices with multiple phone lines, computer equipment more sophisticated than anything I'd seen outside of movies, and filing systems that spoke of extensive record-keeping. "This area is off-limits without Vincent's express permission," Maria explained. "The men who work here handle sensitive matters that require privacy." Through one open doorway, I glimpsed several men in suits hunched over computers and phones, speaking in low voices that carried the urgency of important business. They looked up as we passed, studying me with the professional assessment of people trained to evaluate threats and opportunities. "They're wondering about me," I observed. "They're wondering how long you'll be staying," Maria corrected. "Vincent has never brought anyone into this house who wasn't family or essential business. Your presence here sends a message about your importance to him." We returned to the main house through a different route that took us past a gymnasium that looked like it belonged in a professional athletic facility. Through the glass walls, I could see Vincent working out with an intensity that spoke of both physical discipline and emotional outlet. He'd stripped down to athletic wear that revealed a body marked with scars, some obviously surgical, others clearly the result of violence. He moved through his routine with the focused precision of a man who understood that physical strength might mean the difference between life and death. When he noticed us watching, he didn't stop his workout, but he did meet my eyes through the glass with an expression I couldn't interpret. "He maintains himself very carefully," Maria said. "In his position, weakness is an invitation for others to challenge his authority." We climbed back upstairs to my wing of the house, And Maria showed me additional amenities I'd missed the night before. A small library stocked with current bestsellers, a sitting room with a television and comfortable chairs, even a kitchenette where I could prepare simple meals if I preferred privacy. "Vincent wants you to be comfortable here," she emphasized. "But he also wants you to understand the rules that keep everyone safe." "What rules?" Maria's expression grew serious. "You don't leave the compound without Vincent's permission and escort. You don't use phones or computers to contact anyone from your previous life. You don't discuss Vincent's business with anyone, ever. And most importantly, you trust Vincent's judgment about your safety, even when you don't understand his decisions." The list of restrictions made my temporary captivity feel more real, more permanent. "And if I break these rules?" "Vincent is very understanding about mistakes made from ignorance," Maria said carefully. "But deliberate defiance of his protection puts not just you at risk, but everyone in this house who cares about you." The implicit threat was clear. My actions would have consequences for innocent people who'd been kind to me. It was a masterful way to ensure compliance without resorting to crude force. A knock at the sitting room door interrupted our conversation. One of Vincent's men appeared, not one I'd seen before, but clearly cut from the same professional mold. "Mrs. Romano," he said to Maria. "Mr. Russo requests Miss Morrison's presence in his office." Maria squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Remember what I told you about trust," she said quietly. I followed the man through corridors that had seemed welcoming during the tour, but now felt more like the approaches to an audience chamber. Vincent's office was larger than I'd realized when glimpsing it from the doorway, with windows on 2 walls and furniture that managed to suggest both comfort and authority. Vincent stood behind his desk, still in his workout clothes, but with a towel draped around his neck. The casual attire somehow made him seem more dangerous rather than less, as if he was comfortable enough in his power to receive me without the armor of a formal suit. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "We need to discuss what happens next." I remained standing, some instinct warning me that sitting would put me at a psychological disadvantage. "What about what happens next?" He smiled at my defiance, but there was approval in it rather than irritation. "Marcus Chen has made contact. He wants to meet with you." My blood ran cold. "You're not actually considering—" "I'm considering using his desperation to our advantage," Vincent interrupted. "He's frightened, Miss Morrison. Frightened men make mistakes, and mistakes give us opportunities." "You want to use me as bait?" "I want to use his feelings for you, whatever they might be, to draw him into the open where we can end this matter permanently." I sank into the chair after all, the implications hitting me like a physical weight. He doesn't have feelings for me. Everything between us was a lie from the beginning. Vincent moved around the desk to perch on its edge, bringing him closer to my eye level. "Perhaps. But his current panic suggests otherwise. Why would he risk contacting you if he didn't care about your opinion of him? Because he's scared you'll kill him? He should be scared. But scared men don't usually try to apologize to their victims unless guilt is involved. And guilt suggests genuine emotion, however misguided." I stared up at him, trying to understand the chess game he was playing in his mind. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A meeting. Carefully controlled, completely supervised. You listen to what he has to say, perhaps even appear to forgive him. Meanwhile, my people trace his location and identify his support structure. And then?" Vincent's expression went cold. "Then justice is served for your father, for you, and for the insult to my family." The casual way he planned Marcus's death made me feel sick, but I couldn't deny the part of me that wanted to see my ex-boyfriend pay for what he'd done. The violation of recording me without consent, the betrayal of distributing the video, the revelation that our entire relationship had been built on lies. All of it deserved consequences. "When?" I asked quietly. Soon. He's growing more desperate by the hour, which means he'll be more likely to agree to terms that favor us. Vincent stood and returned to his side of the desk. But first, you need to understand something important about your situation here. What's that? This isn't temporary, cara mia. Even after we resolve the Chen problem, you won't be returning to your old life. My heart started racing. What do you mean? I mean that Thomas Morrison's daughter belongs under my protection permanently. The enemies I've made in my lifetime don't forget, and they don't forgive. Your connection to me through your father makes you a target for as long as I'm alive. You can't just decide that, I protested, standing to face him. I already have, he replied calmly. The question is whether you'll accept this gracefully, or whether we'll have to find other ways to ensure your compliance. We stared at each other across the expensive desk, and I realized with crystal clarity that my brief taste of freedom between my parents' death and this moment had been an illusion. I'd been living on borrowed time, and now the debt was being called in. I want to see Marcus, I said finally. I want to hear him try to explain what he did. Vincent's smile was sharp as a blade. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 days passed before Marcus finally agreed to Vincent's terms for a meeting. During that time, I found myself settling into the rhythm of life at the compound, with an ease that disturbed me. The luxury was seductive, certainly, but it was more than that. For the first time since my parents' death, I felt protected, cared for, like I mattered to someone beyond my immediate usefulness. Vincent maintained a careful distance during those days, appearing at meals and checking on my comfort, but never pushing for intimacy or closeness that I wasn't ready to give. His restraint was probably calculated, a way of building trust before asking me to take risks for his vendetta, but it felt genuine enough to lower my guard incrementally. Maria had become my constant companion, showing me how the household operated and sharing stories about my father that painted a picture of a man who'd been both respected and loved by Vincent's people. The more I learned about their relationship, the more I understood that my father hadn't just been an employee, he'd been a trusted advisor, almost a brother to Vincent in the way that mattered most to men in their positions. Your father was the only person who could tell Vincent when he was wrong, Maria confided as we walked through the gardens on the morning of the planned meeting. Not about business. Vincent's instincts about business are perfect. But about people, about when his protective instincts went too far. Too far how? Vincent sees threats everywhere because threats are everywhere in his world. Your father helped him understand when caution became paranoia, when protection became prison. She gave me a meaningful look. Vincent has been alone too long to remember that distinction. The implication was clear. I was being positioned to fill a role my father had once occupied, to be the voice of reason that kept Vincent's darker impulses in check. It was a dangerous position to occupy, but also potentially a powerful one. That afternoon, I was summoned to Vincent's office for a final briefing before the meeting with Marcus. I found him dressed in another impeccable suit, this one navy blue with subtle pinstripes that emphasized his authority without being ostentatious. He was reviewing documents when I entered, but he looked up immediately and gestured for me to sit. The meeting is set for 6 this evening, he said without preamble. A restaurant in Lincoln Park. Public enough that Marcus will feel safe, controlled enough that my people can monitor everything. Will you be there? Not visibly, but I'll be close enough to intervene if necessary. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those penetrating dark eyes. Are you prepared for this? I'd been asking myself the same question all day. What exactly am I supposed to accomplish? Listen to what he has to say. Let him believe you might forgive him. Most importantly, keep him talking long enough for my people to identify anyone he might have brought as backup. And then? Vincent's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. Then you leave, and I handle the rest. A chill ran down my spine at the casual way he discussed murder. "Vincent, I don't want to watch you kill him." "You won't have to watch. You'll be safely away before any unpleasantness begins." He stood and moved to a wall safe I hadn't noticed before, entering a combination with practiced efficiency. From inside, he withdrew what looked like an expensive piece of jewelry, a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant. "What's that?" "Insurance," he replied, approaching my chair. "The pendant contains a tracking device and an emergency beacon. If anything goes wrong, if Marcus tries to take you somewhere, press the center stone and hold it for 3 seconds. He moved behind my chair, and I felt his fingers at the nape of my neck as he fastened the necklace. His touch was surprisingly gentle, and I caught the scent of his cologne. Something expensive and masculine that made my pulse quicken involuntarily. "There," he said, returning to face me. "Perfect." I touched the pendant, surprised by how substantial it felt despite its delicate appearance. "You really think he might try to kidnap me?" "I think Marcus Chen is desperate, and desperate people do unpredictable things. Better to be prepared for the worst." A knock at the door interrupted us, and one of Vincent's men entered with the efficient deference I'd come to associate with his organization. "The car is ready, sir. Doctor Rossi has arrived as requested." "Dr. Rossi?" I looked between Vincent and his subordinate. "A precaution," Vincent explained. "Someone to monitor your vital signs during the meeting and ensure you're not being drugged or otherwise compromised." The level of preparation was both reassuring and terrifying. Vincent truly did think of everything, plan for every contingency. I was beginning to understand how he'd survived and thrived in a world where miscalculation meant death. The restaurant Vincent had chosen was elegant but not intimidating, the kind of place where business people met for dinner and couples celebrated anniversaries. I arrived 15 minutes before the scheduled meeting time, alone except for the invisible security presence Vincent had promised. Dr. Rossi, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and discreet mannerisms, was already seated at a nearby table, ostensibly reading a newspaper while actually monitoring my condition through some kind of wireless device. I chose a table near the window with clear sightlines to the entrance and ordered water while I waited. My hands were shaking slightly, and I clasped them in my lap to hide the telltale tremor. Part of me was angry that I was nervous about seeing Marcus again, furious that he still had the power to affect me after everything he'd done. At exactly 6 o'clock, Marcus walked through the door. He looked terrible. The confident, well-groomed man I'd thought I loved had been replaced by someone who'd clearly been sleeping badly and eating worse. His clothes, while still expensive, hung on a frame that had lost weight, and his eyes darted constantly around the room like a hunted animal's. When he spotted me, his face transformed with relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. He crossed the restaurant quickly, sliding into the chair across from me with the desperate urgency of a drowning man reaching for a life preserver. "Faith," he breathed, reaching across the table as if to take my hands. I pulled back instinctively, keeping my hands in my lap. "Hello, Marcus." Up close, the change in him was even more dramatic. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. He looked like a man living in constant fear, which I supposed he was. "I can't believe you agreed to see me," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "After everything that happened, I wasn't sure you'd ever want to look at me again." "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. "But I needed to hear you explain how you could do what you did." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The video, I never meant for it to be distributed. It was supposed to be private, just between us. You recorded me without my consent, Marcus. You violated my privacy in the most intimate way possible." I know, and I'm sorry. God, Faith, I'm so sorry." He ran his hands through his hair, making it even more disheveled. "I was young and stupid, and I thought it would be romantic, like a private memory we could share." The explanation was so pathetic, so inadequate, that I almost laughed. A memory? You made a sex tape without telling me, Marcus. That's not romance. That's violation. You're right. You're absolutely right, and I've regretted it every day since. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading. But the distribution, that wasn't me, Faith. My family, they found the video on my computer and they decided to use it. I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. Your family? I let confusion color my voice, as if I didn't already know about his connection to the Chen organization. Marcus glanced around nervously before lowering his voice. There are things about my life that I never told you. Things I should have told you from the beginning. Like what? Like the fact that my family isn't just an import-export. We're connected to certain elements in Chicago that operate outside the law. The confession seemed to cost him something, as if admitting it out loud made it more real. I waited for him to continue, keeping my expression neutral despite the anger building in my chest. When they found out about your connection to Vincent Russo through your father, they saw an opportunity. The video was supposed to be leverage, a way to get to Russo through you. So you never cared about me at all. I kept my voice level, but inside I felt something breaking all over again. No, that's not true. He reached across the table again, and this time I let him take my hand. His skin was cold and clammy with nervous sweat. What started as an assignment became real, Faith. I fell in love with you for real. How am I supposed to believe that after everything? Because I'm risking my life to be here. The words burst out of him with desperate intensity. Do you think Russo's people aren't watching this place? Do you think I don't know what happens to people who cross him? I glanced toward Dr. Rossi's table, where the older man was still calmly reading his newspaper. Then why come? Why risk it? Because I love you, Marcus said simply. Because I needed you to know that not everything between us was a lie. And because I want to get you away from Russo before he destroys you the way he destroys everyone he touches. The irony was almost laughable. Marcus, who delivered me into Vincent's hands through his betrayal, now wanted to save me from the consequences of his own actions. Vincent isn't destroying me, I said carefully. He's protecting me from people who want to hurt me because of what you did. He's using you. Marcus's voice rose before he caught himself and lowered it again. Don't you see? He doesn't care about you. He cares about revenge against my family. You're just a convenient weapon in his arsenal. And what was I to you? A convenient way to get information about my father's work? The question hit home, and Marcus flinched again. At first, yes. But that changed, Faith. It changed the moment I got to know you, the real you. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of all the lies and betrayals hanging between us like a physical presence. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to think that some small portion of our relationship had been genuine. But I'd learned too much about the world these men operated in to trust anything at face value. What do you want from me, Marcus? I asked finally. I want you to leave with me. Tonight. Right now. His grip on my hand tightened. I have a car outside. Resources my family doesn't know about. We can disappear, start over somewhere Russo and my family can't find us. Just like that? Walk away from everything? What is there to walk away from? Your job at the diner? Your studio apartment? He leaned closer, his voice taking on the persuasive tone I remembered from better times. I can give you a real life, Faith. Safety, security, a future where you don't have to look over your shoulder. It was tempting, I had to admit. The idea of escaping from both Vincent's gilded cage and the dangerous world Marcus had pulled me into held obvious appeal. But I'd learned enough about these men to know that escape was rarely as simple as it seemed. And your family? They'll just let you go? Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Fear, uncertainty, desperation. I'll handle my family. The important thing is getting you safe. Safe from Vincent, you mean? Safe from all of it, he insisted. From Russo, from my family. From this whole world that treats people like chess pieces, to be moved around and sacrificed. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception. What I saw was a man who was genuinely terrified, but also genuinely determined. Whether that determination was born of love or guilt, I couldn't tell. I need to think about it, I said finally. Relief flooded his features. Of course. But don't take too long, Faith. Every day you stay with Russo makes it harder for me to keep you safe. Keep me safe from what? His expression grew grave. From becoming so important to him that he'll never let you go. Marcus left the restaurant first, after making me promise to consider his offer and giving me a phone number where I could reach him. I sat alone at the table for another 20 minutes, nursing a cup of coffee I didn't want, and trying to process everything he'd said. Dr. Rossi had left shortly after Marcus, presumably to report back to Vincent, leaving me truly alone with my thoughts for the first time in days. The pendant around my neck felt heavier now, a tangible reminder of Vincent's control over my life. Marcus was right about one thing. Vincent was using me as a weapon in his war against the Chen family. But he was also wrong about something crucial. Vincent wasn't just using me. There was something deeper there. Something more personal that went beyond simple revenge. When I finally left the restaurant, Vincent's car was waiting at the curb as promised. The driver held the door for me without speaking, and we drove through the darkening city in silence. I found myself studying the neighborhoods we passed, wondering if I'd ever see them again as a free woman. Back at the compound, Vincent was waiting for me in his study. He'd changed from his suit into more casual clothes, dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, but he still radiated the same controlled power that seemed to be his natural state. "How did it go?" he asked as I settled into the chair across from his desk. "He wants me to run away with him," I said without preamble. Something dangerous flashed in Vincent's eyes. "Does he now?" "He says he loves me, that not everything between us was a lie." "And you believe him?" I considered the question carefully. "I think he believes it. Whether it's actually true is another matter." Vincent nodded approvingly. "Good. You're learning to think like someone who understands this world." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those penetrating dark eyes. "What did you tell him?" "That I'd think about it." "Wise. It's always better to leave desperate men with hope than to drive them to desperation." He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the gardens where security lights were beginning to flicker on. "Did he mention where he wanted to take you?" "No specifics, just somewhere your family and his couldn't find us." Vincent's laugh was cold and humorless. "There's nowhere on earth Marcus Chen could hide from me if he took something that belonged to me." The possessive way he said "belong to me" sent a shiver down my spine. "I don't belong to you, Vincent." He turned from the window to face me, his expression serious. "Don't you? Your father placed you under my protection when he chose to work for me. His death made that protection permanent. Marcus's betrayal made it absolute." He moved closer, perching on the edge of his desk. "You are mine, cara mia, whether you accept it or not." "And if I choose to leave with Marcus?" "Then you'll be choosing to die with him," Vincent replied matter-of-factly. "Because I will hunt him down and kill him, and anyone who helps him, including you if necessary." The casual way he threatened my life should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself studying his face, looking for signs of bluff or manipulation. What I saw was absolute certainty. Vincent meant every word he'd said. "You'd really kill me?" I asked quietly. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of what might have been pain. "I'd prefer not to. You're Thomas Morrison's daughter, and I loved your father like a brother. But I won't allow you to be used against me, and I won't allow Marcus Chen to profit from his betrayal. So my choices are to stay here as your prisoner or die as your enemy. Your choices are to accept your place in my family or refuse it and face the consequences." He stood and returned to his side of the desk. "But before you decide, there's something you should know about Marcus's offer." "What?" Vincent opened a drawer and withdrew a tablet, which he turned toward me. On the screen was what appeared to be surveillance footage of Marcus leaving the restaurant. But instead of getting into a car alone as he'd implied, he was met by 2 other men who looked like they belonged to the same organization. "Marcus didn't come to that meeting alone," Vincent said. "And he's not operating independently of his family. This whole romantic rescue scenario is just another manipulation." I stared at the footage, feeling the last of my naive hope crumble away. "They're using him to get to me." "They're using him to get to you to get to me," Vincent corrected. "The plan is probably to take you somewhere they can control, then use you as leverage to force concessions from me. And when you refuse to give them what they want, they'll kill you and declare war anyway. At least this way, they get to hurt me personally before the shooting starts." The cold calculation of it all made me feel sick. I'd been a pawn in this game from the moment Marcus first approached me, moved around by forces I'd never even known existed, until it was too late to escape. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Known what?" "That Marcus was setting a trap tonight, that his offer was fake." Vincent's expression softened slightly. "I suspected from the moment he agreed to meet. Men in his position don't take risks for love, Karamia. They take risks for advantage. Then why let me go? Why not just tell me it was a trap? Because you needed to see it for yourself, to understand what kind of man you thought you loved." He moved around the desk to stand closer to me. "And because you needed to make a real choice, not one forced on you by ignorance." I looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd claimed ownership of my life with such casual authority. "What choice is that?" "Whether to be my enemy or my family. Whether to fight against the protection I'm offering or accept it and the responsibilities that come with it." "What responsibilities?" Vincent smiled, and for the first time since I'd met him, it seemed genuinely warm. "The responsibility of being Thomas Morrison's daughter, of carrying on his legacy of honor and loyalty, of helping me build something better than what came before. And if I refuse, then I'll still protect you from the Chen family, because I promised your father I would. But you'll live as a prisoner rather than as family, and that benefits no one." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where my father had once walked while discussing business philosophy with Vincent. The compound was beautiful in the gathering darkness, all warm lights and peaceful shadows. It could be a home if I let it, or it could be a very comfortable prison. "Marcus was right about one thing," I said without turning around. "You do see people as chess pieces." "Sometimes. But not you, Faith. Never you." "Then what am I to you?" I heard him move closer, felt his presence behind me without touching. "You're the daughter of my dearest friend. Your family. You're—" He paused, as if searching for words. "You're the future I want to build." I turned to face him, studying his expression in the reflected light from the windows. "The future? A family that's about more than just power and fear. A legacy that your father would be proud of." His voice grew softer. "Children who grow up knowing they're loved and protected, not just feared." The implication hung between us, heavy with possibility and danger. Vincent wasn't just offering me protection. He was offering me a life, a future, a place in his world that went far beyond simple captivity. "I need time to think," I said. "Time is one thing we don't have much of," Vincent replied. "Marcus will expect an answer soon, and the longer we wait, the more desperate his family becomes." "How long?" "Tomorrow night. Marcus has agreed to another meeting, this one at a location of my choosing. You can give him your answer then." I nodded, though the thought of facing Marcus again filled me with dread. "And after that?" "After that, we deal with the Chen family permanently, and you begin your new life as a Russo." The name sounded strange applied to me, foreign and dangerous. But it also sounded right somehow, like a key turning in a lock I hadn't even known existed. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow," I said finally. Vincent smiled and moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Whatever you decide, cara mia, know that your father would be proud of the woman you've become. Strong, intelligent, principled, everything he hoped you would be." Before I could respond, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, the kind of kiss a father might give a beloved daughter, or a man might give a woman he was learning to love. "Sleep well," he said softly. "Tomorrow changes everything." As I made my way back to my room, I realized he was right. Tomorrow would force me to choose between the illusion of freedom with Marcus and the reality of family with Vincent. Between a man who'd betrayed me once and would likely do so again, and a man who'd claimed me as family and would protect that claim with his life. It wasn't really a choice at all. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about my father and the choices he'd made. He'd chosen loyalty to Vincent over safety, honor over ease, family over blood. Tomorrow I would make the same choice, and in doing so, I would finally understand what it meant to be Thomas Morrison's daughter. The next evening, I sat across from Marcus in an abandoned warehouse that Vincent had chosen for our final meeting. He looked even worse than he had at the restaurant, hollow-eyed and desperate, like a man who knew his time was running out. "Have you made your decision?" he asked without preamble. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man I'd thought I loved, but a stranger who'd worn a familiar face while planning my destruction. "Yes," I said simply. "I have." "And?" I stood, the pendant around my neck feeling warm against my skin. "Goodbye, Marcus." The hurt and confusion in his eyes might have been genuine, but it no longer mattered. I'd chosen my family, and Vincent Russo always protected his family. As I walked toward the exit where Vincent waited in the shadows, I heard Marcus call my name one last time. I didn't look back. Thomas Morrison's daughter was going home,